Hello. Welcome to Do the Woo, the podcast where we talk about all things WooCommerce. I'm James Kemp, the core product manager for WooCommerce.
And I'm Katie Keith from Barn2. And today we're going to be talking about Radical Speed Month, which just took place, across Automatic and also at Woo.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a different session today because it's just us two, right?
Well, that is because I'm afraid you were the perfect guest. So we didn't need a guest because you know all things that happen at Woo.
Yeah, I have all the ins and outs. Before we dive in, if you have any questions and you're watching live, feel free to ask in whatever channel you're watching it on. We'll try and answer them. And yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't already follow us, then please follow us or subscribe wherever you're watching this. So you can follow us on YouTube at Do the Woo Podcast, on X at Do the Woo, and all the places you can follow us are on our website, dothewoo.com. So make sure you do that so that you don't miss on future episodes. Now, let's get started. So I think the first thing we should talk about is what was Radical Speed Month for anybody who hasn't heard. To me, it sounds something like to do with drugs. Did you all just get high all month?
No, we didn't. High on code, I guess, is what we did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise initiative. And the concept was that essentially every single person in the company, apart from some select people that were, maintaining vital things that had to be maintained for the month, were asked to pair up into teams and essentially work on anything that they wanted. And really, it was a way to experiment with being able to ship fast, not having any blockages or processes that you normally have to go through to get code out there or to get a project out there, but also to utilize AI as like a core principle and really focus on what's possible now with just a very small team. So we were restricted to 2 people. If we wanted any more than that, we kind of had to put a pitch together and explain why we needed more than 2 people. And we were also, for the most part, restricted to just focusing on one project. You may have seen some posts that I put out right when it started, where I was focusing on 2 things, one of which was the variations project, and one of them was focusing on product add-ons, one of our extensions. And I kind of, over time, realized that, okay, if I want, one of these things to be really good, it's going to be better to focus on just one thing. So we had, I think, I want to say just over 700 pairs of projects that were...
At Woo specifically or Automatic?
No, Automatic wide. Yeah, this was an Automatic wide initiative. Woo had, let me just have a look, 174 Woo projects in the 4 weeks. And as the name implies, it was an experiment that we were going to run for 1 month. And it was very fun. It was great to be able to just, take any idea and kind of roll with it. And one of the main things was that you were able to ship it, and then it was kind of your responsibility to make sure that what you're shipping is good and valuable, and that you're able to sort of consider the impact that it might have as a small team. So we had people who maybe focused on our existing products and worked on projects related to them, but we also had people that spun up projects that were completely unrelated to anything that Automatic works on, out completely outside of WordPress even. But yeah, we can dive into some of them shortly.
Yeah, I'm interested initially in how the decision-making process works. So did it have to align with strategic priorities? Did you have complete free reign?
We had complete free reign. I think the concept was that it gives you the ability to decide what you feel is important, or I think decide what you feel is important, and that could be, something that would have significant business impact for whatever project you're working on. But also could be used as like a learning tool and just a way to experiment with different ways of working that we're not normally used to. And I think one of the big things was that not everyone is an engineer or was paired with an engineer. So people were able to use AI in ways that maybe they're not usually doing in their normal role. And I think that made it quite interesting. I think ultimately the ideas that are maybe going to continue are the ones that would have some sort of impact on either the business or the customer, whoever the customer might be. But yeah, I think there was many different approaches to the projects that people experimented with. And some people would like start a project and finish it in a week and then move on to another project. But it was always, one project at a time. So that was interesting.
Okay, and let's have some examples then. I'm interested in kind of different examples, some that were with engineers, some that weren't, and how that could be productive, and even something a bit more radical. So let's go through a few examples.
Yeah, I have a bunch of examples for WooCommerce. I think one of the examples that wasn't WooCommerce related was and this was shown in the keynote at WordCamp, the desktop mode for WordPress is quite a radical concept for how WordPress could work. It works as a plugin on top of WordPress, and it kind of converts it to this desktop OS mode. And that's quite impressive to ship something that works that well and is that fleshed out and that complicated in, I was going to say 4 weeks, but I think it was even ready to go before that. So that's one example of something that was still WordPress adjacent. The things that I am most aware of are the WooCommerce projects that came through. And we've actually been spending some time kind of grouping those projects now and figuring out what to do with them now, and how we can either roll them into the product or keep experimenting with them. So some of the ones, I'm going to try and see if there's any that are a little bit different. One comes to mind, and it's like it's like a pinata moment. I'm just going to see if I can find
Where
it.
you just smash everything with a stick.
Pretty much.
Okay.
No, I think
We'll
it's like
want to do that at some point, but
let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. So I've got a fly flying around me. So the concept was to bring small moments of genuine delight to WooCommerce, and sort of showing up at celebratory moments for the merchant. So you might consider like, okay, they've made 100 sales now. I'm going to see if I can share this somehow. Let's see. I haven't done sharing on this live stream yet, so this may or may not work. Let's see. Is this gonna work? Share. Nope. This fly is annoying. Just trying to isolate it, but it's not really working out for me.
Is it a link you could give me because I'm logged in as the host?
No, I can load it. It's just on it's a video. I only wanted to show the video. Yeah, okay, maybe I can't share this particular screen. Maybe if I do full screen, well, that might work. Let's try this. Okay, I'm sharing that. I think you have to add it.
Yeah, done that.
Nice. So this is a little demo of the pinata moment.
Yeah.
And this one's quite a quite a random, but celebratory moment for the merchant that someone worked on. But it's quite nice, quite fun.
Yeah, it's cute.
So their project was all about all about kind of the celebratory moments and small sprinkles and excitement throughout the WooCommerce experience. So they celebrated ordinary moments, and another project adjacent to that was one that was called Woo Sprinkles, which was kind of sprinkling a bit of UI design and refresh throughout the admin of WooCommerce, which was pretty cool.
What sort of thing?
There was quite a few. There was a lot of work done on the order management page, and it was things like refining, the width of the order management page, which by default is just the full width of the window. Kind of moving some of the primary actions into better view, and then like UI tweaks that just kind of modernize the existing experience a bit more, which was quite nice. That was one of our designers, and I'm not sure who she was partnered with, but that was cool. You might have seen Bo, who is our artistic director for WooCommerce, shared some explorations around the navigation for WooCommerce, so the left-hand navigation. He was experimenting with what an e-commerce focused mode would look like, essentially. So you kind of click, WooCommerce is the top level item, and then you click into that and you get a very focused navigation that has only e-commerce adjacent menu items, and it's like a stepped navigation, which is something I've heard quite a few people talking about. It came up at Checkout Summit. A couple of people mentioned it at WordCamp Europe as well. Not specifically Bo's exploration, but just that concept in general of essentially an e-commerce mode, which I think could be pretty interesting. I think that is something that the merchant experience would be enhanced, I think. I like the concept of them being able to choose what's most important to them. And, maybe different users of the website have different needs. I don't know whether that's a WordPress level thing or a WooCommerce, something that we can at least do on the e-commerce side. One of the projects that I shared before was, I'm going to try and share it again. I might have to zoom in a bit. There we go. All right, share. So I shared, this is the project that myself and Polly were working on, and it was an exploration around how we could improve the variations experience. So currently the experience is a bit rough. I don't think it's changed much over its lifetime in WooCommerce, but it's one of the experiences that many merchants and users complain about the most. The process of dealing with large numbers of variations and even smaller numbers is still, quite a complicated experience. It's not great. You have to configure your attributes, define them as attributes used for variations, and then switch over to the variations tab. You kind of have to save in between, and it's quite a convoluted process. So myself and Polly spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we can improve that process and make it more usable for merchants and non-technical people to set up, but also more of a flow that takes you through the process. So one of the first things we did was to move the attribute configuration into the variations tab. So this is attributes specifically used for variations. So you could say, okay, I want my product to have theme options, and I want them to have color options. So you can kind of add them here. And one of the things that you could do that you can't do currently in WooCommerce is to create a new attribute. And it would allow you to create a global attribute. So you can create local attributes, which, in my opinion, is not a great type of attribute to lead with. I think typically, especially for variations, it's a better experience to have global attributes, because you can filter, on the front end as a customer, you can filter, and they're also reusable across products.
Yeah, totally agree. And the number of support tickets we get from people using, say, our product filters or product table plugins, they don't understand why their variations or attributes aren't working in the filters or whatever, and it's because they're product specific and they don't know there's a difference. And it's a big job for them to then go and recreate them all under product attributes. So that's good. They can't get it wrong if it's right there.
Yeah, and I even discussed the idea of just not having local attributes at all in this variations experience, because there's really not much benefit. There was a few people that said, okay, we have essentially attributes that are unique to every product. I have no examples for that, but I guess similar to like an SKU type code that belongs to just that product.
Yeah, that does happen, but does it matter if they're added globally?
The only reason they didn't want to do that is if they have thousands, and then it becomes quite messy to manage, those attributes. But I'm not 100% sure. There was, one merchant that uses them in particular that was very keen to maintain them. But the other thing I'm not sure on, and I would need to kind of find out a bit more, is whether that is, I expect that's more of like the product level attribute and not attributes that are used for variations.
It could be used for variations as well, if there's one product that's very distinct from the rest or something.
Yeah, true.
But then if you think about, so an attribute is just a taxonomy, and there's nowhere else in WordPress where you can add taxonomy terms that are only available to one, let's say, post, like tags or whatever. So you might add tags that only apply to one post, and that's not seen as a problem, is it, in WordPress?
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's a bit more like a meta field, right? Where you're giving it a label and a value, but the value happens to be, separated by pipes, which is also not very user-friendly.
True.
Which actually, even if this isn't a global attribute, at least we solve that issue as well. So you've got this kind of, pill type value field, which makes it a bit easier to deal with.
Yeah.
So some improvements there. We kept the attributes tab, like I say, for products level attributes that aren't used for variations. There's still some discussion as to whether we should show these variation attributes in the attributes tab as well.
Yeah, people might expect that.
Yeah, especially, if they have experience with it. So you would add the attributes, and then you get this kind of summary of the attributes that have been added. So you can see that within the variations tab. And then you can either generate the variations or add variations manually. So the experience of generating variations in WooCommerce currently is it generates every single possible combination of attributes, and it does it in batches of 50. So you have to click continuously to generate until it's created all of the variations for you.
Yeah.
And that experience is not clear. Like I don't think there's anything that tells you you have to do that. You just kind of have to figure it out for yourself.
I think it just pops up on the screen once it gets to 50 or something.
Yeah, it says at the beginning, I think it's limited to 50, but it doesn't say, run it again to generate the next 50.
Oh, that is confusing then, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we wanted to improve that experience. And one of the ways we were thinking about to do that is to allow the person setting it up to choose which attributes to use to actually create the variations. So in this example, if they select both theme and color, it's going to create 15 separate variations. If they take away color, it will create 5 variations. So 5 of the 5 themes available in any color. And you can imagine this is a prototype, so this may not work. But as you start adding more like this, just going to add not that one. Pattern. So if we add a load, I'm not going to create any new. Yeah, I didn't think it would. I'll have to refresh. The combination of using attributes to create variations becomes quite exponential, because for every one you add, it's a multiplier against everything else.
Yes, it's always been like that, yeah.
So for this example, if every combination is selected, it's going to create 1,200 variations. But as soon as you remove one, it drops it dramatically. And that makes the process of creating variations much better for the merchant, because, okay, maybe, size doesn't affect the stock count or the image or the price. And they can kind of tweak this to get closer to the number of variations that they actually need without having to either create each one manually, because creating 75 variations manually is going to take a lot of time, but creating 1,200 variations to get down to 75 is also going to take a lot of time. So by having this ability to choose which attributes actually generate the variations makes that process much nicer for the merchant.
Okay, so if you did that and got it down to 75, how would they choose a size?
So it's exactly the same as the way WooCommerce works today. Where if we look down here, so
Oh, it's effectively blank, I see.
it's
Any
blank,
option.
yeah. So currently, if you could create one variation, and it could be any theme, any color, any size, any material. There's one product that it narrows down to on the front end, but you've only got one variation to deal with. So it works in exactly the same way, and the whole data structure behind all of this is exactly the same as what it is today. The only difference is the UI.
Yeah.
So once you've generated the variations, you get this experience of data views. This is data views and data forms, which is the experience that we've talked a lot about in regards to the product editor. So data views is a nice table where now we can actually filter and search the variations. So we can see all yellow ones. We can add filters for things like the attributes. Obviously, pattern is one that we chose. Let's see, color. We can say show all the blue ones. So the merchant can kind of group the variations like this, and then they would be able to select all of them and bulk edit, very specific selections of variations. So the bulk edit experience is also new in this. and it's reflecting a similar experience that another team was working on for the product list. So, the list of all your products, once you click, I think it's WooCommerce products, right? So this experience is very, very similar to that, and it adds a bit of consistency in the UI and the expectations. And it's pretty cool. You can do some nice stuff with, price changes across the selected products. I don't know if you can see. Oh, you probably can't.
You can't see the open drop down. Just
Yeah. So you can set new amounts. You can increase all prices by a specific amount. You can decrease. You can increase by percentage and decrease by percentage. So you can make all of these, batch changes to variations in one go, which makes for a much nicer editing experience.
So what are we talking about then? Is this happening? Is it live? Is it in QA? Is it a proposal?
So that particular work, and also some other work, is actually will be in 10.9 behind a feature flag. The variations work is very much not ready, but the code exists in core. The beginnings of the code exists in core. For that work specifically, the goal would be we want to have this kind of final vision of the future product editor. We had the product editor experience that we shipped a few years ago. You may have seen that that's now being, it was deprecated in 2024, but we're now actually removing the code from the code base. And as an aside, one of the reasons for that is because we found that when we were working with these AI agents on the code base, they were looking at that code as an example of, okay, this is how, code should be done in WooCommerce. And it definitely isn't how code should be done. That's the reason we stopped that project, was because it diverted away from like data forms and data views, which is the WordPress experience of those, similar, table views and form fields. So yeah, it was confusing AI agents. They were trying to use code from that quite a lot, which isn't what we wanted. So yeah, we want to understand what the future version of the product editor looks like, and the way I would like to do it is to have that future vision. Okay, this is what we're aiming for, and then ship the smaller components of that over time. So we're not saying, we're not spending a year redoing the whole editor, shipping it, and then creating a ton of headaches for people who extend it or integrate with it. But we would like to do it a bit more iteratively. So, okay, in this release, we're updating the variations experience, and that gives plugins time to extend it and work with it, and gather feedback on that as well. So that would be the goal. So one of the things we need to do now is to make sure that that project aligns with what the future version of the editor looks like. And actually, one of the problems with Radical Speed Month is that the teams that were working on these different projects weren't necessarily aligned with the with each other, I guess, because we were very, siloed in the work we were doing. So we found ourselves actually collaborating a lot with Veronica and Luigi, who were working on the product list experience, to make sure that we're not duplicating work across those two screens, because they have very similar aspects. So I think that's one area where the concept of working in teams of two without, blockers, without these kind of input from anyone else, maybe won't work unless we have some sort of final or expected vision. Like, these are this is the goal. These are the kind of components that you can use, which come from the shared design system. So there's some challenges there that we need to figure out and align on before we can actually ship this thing. Because what I wouldn't want to do for variation specifically is have a sort of middle state where we've got the classic experience, a new experience that is much better, but then is replaced by whatever the future experience is. We want to make sure that whatever we ship now is the same as what the future experience would be.
Yeah, and that makes sense about it fitting into a wider project context, because there's been talk for many years about the entire edit product screen with the whole block editor thing and all of that and how that all fits together. So that does make sense, not doing something now that's just going to change later. But we've got feedback from Dave Lutz, who says, love the new variation UI. So people are liking it and hope to see it live.
Yeah, one of the things we did, which was quite nice, was we met with quite a few people. It was, Polly and I and whoever we were meeting with, and we just kind of let them explore this demo, which was a really nice way to figure out what worked and what they expected to happen as they were using it. And I think one of the things that multiple people got from the experience of RSM was to be a bit more public with the work that they're working on. Ask for feedback, use prototypes to actually get feedback coming in before we've got too deep into the actual coding of it. So that was really cool.
Yeah, well, people have always liked that about your work, because you often share things on X for consultation prior to anything actually being done, and people do like feeding back on that and feeling listened to.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a tendency in software, maybe that's going away a bit now, to work on something and then talk about it when it's done, and at that point it's maybe a bit late, especially with software that's quite open, like the core of WooCommerce, where the input of the people that build on top of it and actually contribute to it is very valuable. We have access to hundreds and thousands of people that work with WooCommerce every day, and it makes sense to get their feedback and their experience, and also their experience of how their merchants and their clients actually work with the thing. So it's a really nice way to stay grounded.
Yeah, that's really helpful and valuable, and not always easy to get unless you've got such a big user base as WooCommerce.
Yeah, it's really hard to get hold of merchants specifically. So having this connection with agencies who have merchant clients, because unless they're mildly technical, merchants I've found don't really hang out online anywhere. You can't find them all in one place.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I went to a talk at WordCamp Europe on Friday about market research and the importance of validating product ideas and feature ideas. And I came away thinking that's going to be as much work as actually developing the thing and seeing if people like it. Because once people start using it, then they feed back and you learn and new ideas come to you based on that.
Yeah.
So I get the concept, but it's not always easy to find people. So it's good that we do have some opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we have access to, a number of merchants, but I think we don't directly hear from them as, someone working with them to actually configure their store and hear their pain points. So I think it's good for the agencies and developers to connect us with the merchant, because they have they can kind of translate their problems, the merchant's problems, which is quite nice.
Yeah, and collate them based on multiple merchants that they work with.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I understand the variations thing is quite complex and will be done as more of a long-term thing. I read a tweet by Brian Cords the other day saying that as a developer advocate, he's preparing the release post for an upcoming release. And he said there's more in it than he's ever had before to announce. So what is actually coming soon as a result of all this?
Yeah, there's a few things. I'm actually going to pull up Brian's tweet because it's probably the best overview.
I don't remember if he actually said what was in it, just that there was a lot, but he might.
I think he did. I think he listed it. Let's see. He tweets a lot. Here we go. So yeah, I would say most of the stuff that is coming is behind a feature flag.
What does that mean?
It means if you go to WooCommerce settings, advanced features, it's something that you can turn on or off.
Like the AI stuff.
Yes. So by default, it's not on. And if you want to try it out and experiment with it, you have to go turn it on. It is also possible to have feature flags that don't have a checkbox, like a toggle in that area. And you would turn them on programmatically with like a filter, essentially. Yeah. So I believe most of the things that he's listed are coming as feature flag features, which gives us the ability to have people test it and see, what the experience is like and find bugs. And one of the things we want to do is actually have like a life cycle of feature flags. So how it moves from an experimental feature into a beta release or like a slow rollout of some kind until it's eventually rolled out to everyone. Sometimes we would roll it out to new stores only, like HPOS. So HPOS is actually still behind a feature flag as well, high performance order storage, so that new stores get it and old stores or existing stores are able to turn it on if they want to. So there's numerous ways to kind of deal with feature flags. I had a conversation at WordCamp actually. There was this concept of remote feature flags. So the ability for whoever implemented the feature flag to turn it on remotely to all stores. So similar to like a SaaS product where you could enable a feature without them having to update the plugin.
Wouldn't people hate that because they want control over self-hosted software? And
potentially
as well.
I think it depends what it is. That it's a good way to be able to experiment with sort of like A/B testing, I guess. And you see tools like Shopify doing that quite a lot. I would say it would probably have to be something that they opt in to allow, bleeding edge features that are enabled when we know that it's stable. So I don't think you would see us enabling experimental features, but it might be, okay, this feature has passed a number of beta, programs, and is now ready to be rolled out. And maybe we roll it out to a specific segment more easily. I thought that was interesting. That I can't remember who it was that I was talking to about. I need to write up my notes from WordCamp. But yeah, we don't do that at the moment. At the moment, it's a feature flag, and it is enabled if you enable it, or if we've validated that, okay, that feature is ready to go, which is similar to cost of goods. And then we would just turn it on for everyone or whatever bracket of people that are most suited to it. So Brian's post lists color swatches. So color swatches are in 10.9 behind a feature flag, and they belong to attributes. And that is in the filters and also in the product options block. So that's pretty cool. I think it's color and image swatches. A few sort of email notifications like abandoned cart, back in stock, and review request emails. So the review request email is an email that can be turned on to send, after 7 days of someone purchasing something, to request a review for that product.
Yeah. Now you say it, it seems incredible it's not always been there, because
Yeah.
so many e-commerce stores have that, don't they?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like in the lineup of emails, we have some form of review functionality in WooCommerce. So why not, try and encourage this, aspect of social proof, and just general feedback, because reviews show up in Google as well, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense to make reviews better in WooCore, because Shopify doesn't even have reviews in Core. So that is a clear way that Woo is better than Shopify.
Yeah, there's going to be some work that we do on reviews at some point, because they're very much like glorified comments at the moment.
Mm.
It's a comment field with stars that you can choose. So yeah, we're definitely going to dig into that and see if we can improve that baseline. There's the easy mobile app login and granular push notifications, transactional email logging. This one's quite cool. Variation image galleries and videos in product galleries. So that was one of our extensions in the marketplace that, when we, worked on the more in core stuff, was kind of flagged as something that should probably be in core. So the ability to have more than one image assigned to a variation.
I didn't even know that was a official extension. I only knew about Iconics plugin.
Yeah, it was actually an extension when I was running Iconic. It existed.
You obviously marketed yours better.
I did a very good job of marketing mine. I mean, my plugin was built in 2011 and was the most popular Iconic plugin. So I think it kind of signifies that this maybe should have been available. Like, eventually that plugin became more than just additional images, but
yeah, it had video and stuff in the gallery.
Yeah, we had video and like gallery layouts and things like that. But yeah, like having more than one image on a variation just kind of makes sense. There's the concept of wish lists and save for later that one of the teams was working on. This is the Woo sprinkles, where you've got major admin UI cleanup and a new settings UI. The modernized product catalog, which is the work I was talking about with the product list and a bit of bulk editing in there as well. There's a dual API and a dual REST API and GraphQL API, which is something I need to dig in a bit more about, but it seems like a cool project. Better MCP and abilities for WooCommerce. Block-based email editing improvements and performance improvements, including with checkout draft orders. So I would probably say that all of that work was RSM work. RSM being Radical Speed Month.
Okay.
So that's a pretty cool batch of work to come out of 1 month. That we maybe wouldn't have seen, without that.
Yeah, those are real features that will make a noticeable difference to WooCommerce stores. They're not just tiny little tweaks, they're proper features.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, there was 174 projects. So that's, some of the features that were worked on. And I think now that we're kind of going back to normal, whatever normal looks like now, I expect there'll be some shift in how we work on, a more permanent basis, to be a bit more agile, to be able to, work together in smaller teams. I would hope slightly larger teams, 3 to 4 people, and actually ship things. But there's going to be some work to assign the projects that were being worked on to the relevant product managers of the particular product areas, and kind of prioritize and make sure that they don't just end up disappearing, because I think there's some very cool stuff that was worked on. There was a few AI things which were worked on as well, kind of like in-app chat experiences, which were pretty cool. I'd love to see a bit more of them happening. But yeah, there's tons of good stuff that was worked on. I'm excited to kind of figure out which of those things can actually go into core. And I think, like I said, one of the things we need to do is make sure there's like cohesion between those projects, that we're not duplicating efforts and repeating or creating like different experiences in terms of UI and UX. But I guess that's where the blockers start to come in and divert away from the expectation of radical speed month.
Yeah. So you mentioned about hoping it would become a more usual way of working. So what made speed possible that isn't normally there? Like, what was actually different so that so much could be achieved in such a short time?
I think a few things. There were still some blockers, and I'll get to that. There was the concept of like anyone can do the work, where normally we have our specific roles and we go through the process and the work goes down to an engineer or a designer, and they implement the thing. So I think the allowance for anyone to be able to actually produce code or UI or UX, whether that was the actual code that's added to the product or more of a prototype that can be adapted and turned into a actual thing. I think one of the blockers that we still had was, once the work became a PR, like specifically for WooCommerce, we were allowed to just merge that stuff, and you should be responsible for whatever you're merging. But a lot of it we felt needed still some like engineer input and human input. Like, we don't want to just rely on AI to produce code and hope that it works the same way that we would expect.
Let's hope so, in a product as important as Woo.
I think so. I think there's going to be an influx of AI-based code. There already is an influx of AI code that comes in from internal teams, from contributors, and one of the challenges that we need to figure out is how do we review that with human capacity reliably. I think there needs to be some level of AI review that we can actually trust, because at the moment there's some like logic to it in terms of or some context to it in terms of our code base, but there's still like a level of distrust, I think, between just allowing the AI to say, okay, yeah, I approve this change, let's merge it. We pretty much everything that's been reviewed has had an engineer review it and flag things that the AI has missed, like backwards compatibility or extensibility, or if a designer wasn't part of the project, like this design component is different to how we're doing it over here. And there's a lot of that context that not everyone has. So I think the smaller teams that we create, assuming it goes that way, I think they need to cover the skill set of product design and engineering, whatever, whether one person can cover multiple parts of that triad, or whether there's like an individual person for each of those areas. But I think like those core things need to be covered. And that allows us to produce quality work and work that aligns with everything else, as well as like the way we're moving is very much more towards design system type work. So we're reusing components rather than designing UIs per project. And I think that's going to enable us to be more confident in the code that the AI is producing, alongside, whoever's using that as their tool. And I think there's some level of AI review that needs to happen to get it to a point where we can, 80 to 90% trust it, and then the human has they're not as much of a blocker, because they have they trust the review that's been done already, and they're just kind of signing it off and topping it up to the 100%. So I don't know what that looks like at the moment.
Yeah, at Barn2 we have we only have one QA person, but his whole job is to do QA, and he sets up automated tests, but a lot of it is manual checking, and we haven't seen a way to get rid of that. So do you have QAs at Woo, or does it always go to a fully qualified developer?
I would say it probably goes mostly to the engineer or like an engineer that is responsible for whatever area the code is, based on. So we might have specific engineers that are experts in the checkout and cart. We might have engineers that are experts in the REST API or the store API. And yeah, someone from one of those teams would be the person it goes to kind of quality check that code. But yeah, I feel like their time is better spent actually, creating the thing rather than reviewing the thing.
Well, this is why we created a dedicated role. Obviously, it's cost saving as well, because a QA person is a lower band than a senior developer. So it works really, and actually they're better at the job. In my experience, feel free to shoot me online for this or whatever. Most developers are not good at testing, whereas a dedicated QA can often be much more methodical, knows exactly what tools to use to record and replicate and explain the issues, and generally does a better job of testing.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think one of the things that we do, and that the AIs tend to pick up on, is that most of the work that gets built comes with some sort of test as well. So the PR usually includes, some code-based test. But it's definitely, I think there's two aspects to reviews that slow things down. AI is great at creating PRs that have thousands of changes. And for a human to review that, it takes a lot of time. Like, they have to really think through every change that they're seeing. And I think that's the kind of thing that an AI could review, and we could have some level of trust in. And we do have AIs that review that stuff already. But there's still, I feel there's still like a level of distrust. Like, I wouldn't just blindly say, okay, yeah, that's perfect, because we have a responsibility to everyone using WooCommerce. And people are running their livelihoods on this platform. So we can't, I believe, just ship code that we haven't looked at.
Yeah, I think the distrust is entirely appropriate. AI is an additional tool for more robust testing.
Yeah, so I think we'll see some tooling that is AI based that helps us to improve that process, or reduce the time that process takes. And then the other side to it is like the actual manual testing that some of the work that comes through requires. And that's kind of hard to, again, trust an AI to do. You have tools like Ghost Inspector that do it, and you can review that, which work pretty well. Or Playwright now is the choice of AI tools, or Claude in Chrome, I guess. We did a few experiments of whenever a PR is created, if the AI sees that this has a visual change or like a UI change, it would automate in a sandbox testing that and screenshotting it. One of our engineers, Svetan, created a tool that took a screenshot and then highlighted the specific thing in the screenshot, which was pretty cool because it really, like, I guess if you trust that screenshot, I feel like a screenshot is more trustworthy than it just saying, yeah, it works fine.
But as long as a human looks at it.
Yeah, exactly. Even then, I still feel like you would want to manually test it. So maybe it's just a case of getting those environments and like the configuration needed to test it more automated. So yeah, those are some of the challenges I think with the current way of working.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a huge amount was achieved. It'll be good to see those bits go live soon and other bits maybe more into the future. Now, I think we've covered it pretty comprehensively. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Radical Speed Month before we finish?
Just that I think it was a great experience. I really like that it was like a month-long hackathon, essentially. It gave everyone an opportunity to use AI and explore AI, and the concept of a smaller team and partnering with someone. It gave everyone the opportunity to do that and express their ideas and get their ideas out there that maybe they don't normally feel comfortable doing. And I think doing that is going to act as like a bit of a reset and a refresh in how we work. And I think that's important right now. The tooling that we use is changing on a weekly basis. And I think it's definitely a good experiment to have run. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what, the outcome is, the kind of long-term outcome. And also whether it's an experiment that we run again. I think like all of the feedback I saw online, because I feel like the people doing the projects in their pairs were very much like doing it more in public. There was a lot of work that was shared, a lot of excitement around the work that was being shared. And I think if we can figure out how to do that reliably and cohesively, like that's going to be very beneficial for a product like WooCommerce.
Yeah, well, as you well know, I get frustrated by large organizations moving slowly, which is normally the case. So I really like this concept of a large organization operating as a small one and taking some of the principles from the smaller ones, like the small teams thing you've mentioned and so on. So that could really help things to get done.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
Okay, so what have we got on the next episode?
So in the next episode, we're joined by Tamara Neeson, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of WooCommerce, and we're going to talk about how we can all work together to promote and grow WooCommerce more effectively. I believe that's scheduled for the 22nd of June at 4 p.m. UK time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one because I did my Checkout Summit talk and then I published a blog post about how I think we should be promoting Woo. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Me too.
So if you don't already follow us, then subscribe, follow, etc. YouTube, we're Do the Woo. Podcast, X, we're Do the Woo. And you can find all the places to follow us and previous episodes on dothewoo.com.